again, Mr. Chair, the debate is now on the amendments moved by Ms. Damaf.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Michaud, you now have the floor.
Oh, no, Mr. Chair, I thought that I was next.
Well, I believe that the clerk had a different interpretation of when hands were up. And as you know, I can't see the whole room.
Okay, so just a quick point of order then. I believe the Liberal member needs to move an official amendment. She's just sort of proposed it verbally, but she did not move it.
Ms. Damaf, have you the intention of moving this amendment?
So the motion would be amended to say under point A, hold a 3-hour meeting to hear from RCMP officials, including remove point B completely, and then points I, 1, 2, and 3 under B would remain. And then it would be, and that those meetings be held following the Commissioner's appearance at the Mass Casualties Commission. And to be clear, the panels would be, the panels would be from point A, I through V, one panel, Commissioner Lucky, one panel, and Minister Blair on one panel. So that would fill out the 1 hour. So if you want me to clarify that in the motion, I can.
Are members clear on Ms. Damaf's motion as just articulated?
Mr. Chair, I am not clear on Ms. Damaf's motion. Let's just clarify once more.
So that the committee, maybe this would be clear, that the committee hold a 1-hour meeting to hear from RCMP officials, including, and then those 5 officials. Hold a 1-hour meeting to hear from Brenda Lucky, Commissioner of the RCMP. Hold a 1-hour meeting to hear from former Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, and Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Robert Stewart. That the 3 meetings be held at the same time or on the same day following the Commissioner's appearance at the Mass Casualties Commission. It would just be immediately.
Hey, is that clear for everybody?
Just a point of order, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if the amendment is in order. Maybe the clerk can clarify, and then we can move forward. My understanding is the 1064 requires that the meetings happen within 5 days. Can the clerk clarify?
Clerk?
This is the meeting, Mr. Chair.
So the meeting within 5 days is the meeting we're having right now, Ms. Dancho.
Yeah, point of order.
Mr. Chair.
Point of order?
Yeah, so just the second vote we had was specifically to move into public to discuss the 1064 request. So we have already approved the fact that this meeting is now dealing with the 1064.
Yes,
Yeah.
the 1064.
Yeah, that's my understanding, and we're debating it right now. And I have a list. Madame Michaud, I believe you're next.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I understand we're debating Pam's amendment, and I would like to thank her for that amendment. I agree with her globally, but I would like to thank colleagues from the NDP and the Conservatives that proposed this. The reasons why I agree with the proposed amendments by Ms. Damaf is because it's an issue of timing, really. We do these kinds of things to find answers for the public and for our people. And the week for the Quebec national holiday and the Canadian national holiday, people don't really follow the news that closely. It's a summer, the vacations are coming up. So if we really want to have answers for the population, I think people deserve that this be done at a time that's better chosen, especially with the memorial that Ms. Damaf was talking about. I think the timing is wrong. We also had a very full session, I think, out of respect for the resources of the chamber. Trying to do it next week seems a little hurried, so I think moving it forward. Personally, I would say let's do this during regular sessions in September, but maybe the timing will be okay after Ms. Lucky has testified at the inquiry in July. So that might be a better moment. And I do have a few questions on the text in French. I think the translation here might not be quite right. It doesn't. We don't say meurtre collectif in French, which we should say mass murder in 2020. And I don't know why we say allegations and communications. Maybe we should find a different wording for that. But otherwise, I fully am in agreement with the amendments proposed by Ms. Damoff.
Thank you, Madame Michaud. Now I have Mr. McGregor on the list. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with what Ms. Damoff is proposing in terms of putting this together in a 3-hour meeting. The one part I don't agree with is on the timing. I do know that we as a committee want to be respectful of the inquiry's work, and I still think that we can do that, but the revelations that have come out from media from Wednesday onwards, I think deal with an issue that Parliament needs to be seized with. The mass shooting inquiry is dealing with the events that happened on that terrible day 2 years ago, but we're dealing with allegations that the commissioner of the RCMP became involved in an investigation because it was to make a point for proposed firearms legislation. That's a very serious allegation. We know we have a lot more questions than answers at this point. I do think it's possible for this committee to proceed in an orderly way that respects what the inquiry is trying to do, but also to for us as members of Parliament to do our job to hold the government to account. So. The one thing, though, and I know this might be a sub-amendment to the amendment, is that I think we also need to include the RCMP Deputy Commissioner, Brian Brennan. He's not listed here because it is mentioned that he was on the call with Commissioner Lucky. And in fact, the handwritten notes from Superintendent Campbell noted that Deputy Commissioner Brennan tried to calm things down during what was a very heated call. So he might add an interesting perspective, and I would suggest that the Deputy Commissioner appear alongside the Commissioner during her particular hour. The one part I have issue with in Ms. Damoff's amendment is on the timing. I understand the value that might come about from hearing the Commissioner's testimony during the inquiry, and I understand that's to be at a date around mid-July, but I still think this is an issue that the country is seized with right now, and our interest as a committee, I think, is going to be quite different from what the inquiry is looking at. So I would support having the meeting next week and trying to find a way to be respectful of the fact that the members of the RCMP we have listed here are going to be attending a memorial for a fallen comrade. I'm sure there's a way that we can work around that. The week, we do have Canada Day at the end, but there is a way for us to find some time so that they can both attend a fallen comrade's memorial, but also be present for our important inquiry. So I just have an issue with the date. Everything else is fine, and I would just suggest that we also add Deputy Commissioner Brennan to the list. Thank you.
So, but this is in the form of a sub-amendment to Ms. Damoff's amendment. So are you formally now putting forth the sub-amendment?
Yes, so my only sub-amendment would be to add Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan to the hour that Commissioner Brenda Lucky is appearing.
Okay, Ms. Dancho, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just more to Mr. McGregor has said. I do agree that this is a breaking development. It is shocking and disturbing, and it is certainly regrettable that it is happening during a very sober memorial next week. What I would say is that those responsible for this, the political interference that is mentioned in the testimony, that is on those people. That is on any individual in the Liberal government who put that political interference, as mentioned in the notes, that is legal testimony in the Mass Casualty Commission. So it is deeply regrettable that they have done that, at least alleged in this testimony, and that is why we are here meeting today. So I would agree with Mr. McGregor. I would also agree with Mr. McGregor to add the Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan. Certainly he should be part of that. So we agree on I agree on the timing and his addition there. I would say, however, we are concerned that under the Ms. Damoff's amendment to remove B5, any other department officials involved in 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation and communications. We have no representative yet from the PMO on this. That is supposed to be encapsulated in B5. It is specifically mentioned in 2 separate legal testimonies in the MCC that the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's office directed or pressured Commissioner Lucky, but there's no specific name mentioned. So we require, in order to do a fulsome investigation, a representative from the PMO who is involved in this, who is in those discussions with the Minister and Commissioner Lucky, so that they can come forward and answer questions. Without having anyone representing from the PMO or other relevant top officials involved in this, we cannot verify or ask questions concerning the testimony that was just released. So it's an imperative that we have, at minimum, someone from the Prime Minister's office who was involved at that time come to testify at committee. And again, the Liberal government would know who those individuals are, obviously. So we would be firm on at least one representative from the PMO in order to ensure this is a fulsome investigation.
Other members want to add commentary on the sub-amendment. Mr. McGregor?
Mr. Chair?
I see the clerk pointing, but to whom?
Mr. Lloyd is next, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lloyd, go ahead. And we're keeping an eye on the clock.
Okay,
I don't know how much time. Yeah,
I'll try to be brief, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment to add Brian Brennan, but I can't support Ms. Damoff's amendment as it is, because an hour meeting with 5 RCMP officials, a 1-hour meeting with the Commissioner of the RCMP, and if it's amended, the Deputy Commissioner, and a 1-hour meeting with the Minister of Public Safety and the Deputy Minister is not going to be near enough. I mean, if all 5 of these witnesses want to give 5-minute opening testimony, that's going to eat up about half the meeting, and then we're only going to have 30 minutes for actual substantive questionings. So I would support, I would not support the amendment as is, but I would keep moving forward that let's have 2-hour meetings, one with the RCMP officials that were involved on the call, and then the other 2-hour meeting with the Commissioner and officials and the Minister and officials. And I'm sensitive to what's happening next week, and I think we can be flexible on that, and I would certainly want to be flexible on that, but I think this 1 hour is way too short of a time. It's not giving near enough attention to a very serious issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
other comments or commentary?
Mr. Chair,
On
it's Mr.
the-
McKinnon and then Mr. Van Papta.
Mr. McKinnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'd certainly like to support Mr. McGregor's amendment or sub-amendment. I would actually like us to be able to vote on that particular sub-amendment because I'd like to move a further sub-amendment, which I believe we can't do as long as that's on the floor. I propose to move an amendment to change the instead of 3 one-hour meetings to have one meeting without being too specific about the panels. But anyway, I can't move that until we deal with this sub-amendment.
Mr. Van Popta.
Good, thank you. I'm generally in favor of Mr. McGregor's amendment. I think it's important that we have Mr. Brennan there at the meeting. He was part of the call, and we want to hear from him. I would also underline the fact that our investigation is going to be quite different than the Mass Casualty Commission investigation going on in Nova Scotia right now, which is really looking at operational matters, what happened on the ground, what didn't happen on the ground, timing issues, and our investigation is going to be more into alleged allegations of political interference which I think definitely falls within the realm of what this Public Safety Committee needs to be doing. So I think it's an urgent matter, and I think that we need to move along just as quickly as we can. Now, I understand that House of Commons resources are going to be limited over the next couple of weeks, but it is also my understanding that for an emergency meeting, they can be made available. So I think that we need to use whatever tools are available to us, provided by the House of Commons, to conduct these meetings as soon as we can. Thank you.
Clerk, are there other hands up?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Damoff has her hand up.
Ms. Damoff?
Just for clarification, Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment is to add the deputy commissioner to the motion. Okay, that's what we're voting on. That's it. Okay, let's vote on
It
that.
is also about timing, Mr. Chair.
I think we should deal with those separately if we could.
Well, it depends on what the sub-amendment was.
Commissioner. Yeah.
I
Mr.
didn't hear
McGregor
any
can-
reference. I didn't hear any reference to timing when Mr. McGregor read his sub-amendment.
Chair, yeah, I'll confirm that. It's just to add the deputy commissioner at this point, because I think we're going to have a discussion on the timing after we pass this sub-amendment.
Okay, so colleagues, I'm looking at my clock. We vote in 11 minutes. Clerk, how much time do we have to leave for members to vote in a timely way? How far do we run this clock down?
I would say 10 minutes, Mr. Chair. We can quickly
With 10,
vote.
with 10 minutes left, you mean?
Yes.
10 minutes of the bells? Well, it's 11 now. So why don't we stop the discussion now, vote, come back, and then we'll sort out the voting on the sub-amendment and the amendment.
So, Mr. Chair,
Is that all right with everybody?
We are doing the vote right now before suspending. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, well, we've got.
Can we have clarification? Can we have the vote on the sub-amendment now and then suspend?
Is that the willingness of the committee? Yes. Okay, let's take a vote on Mr. McGregor's sub-amendment. Mr. McGregor, do you want to quickly read it, please?
So my sub-amendment is that the amendment be amended by adding Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan of the RCMP to the panel with Commissioner Brenda Lucki.
Okay, that's clear. Clerk, would you administer the vote, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Ms. Damoff? Yes. Mr. Chang?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Nur Mohammed?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Shifki?
Yes.
Ms. Dancho?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Van Popta?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
Oui.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 11-11, nays contre, 0 aucun.
Very good. Thank you, colleagues. The sub-amendment passes. Okay, now we're within a period where we should bear down on the vote.
Mr. Chair,
So 10, yes?
I would like to move a sub-amendment as soon as we get back.
Yes, well, let's one thing at a time, Mr. McKinnon. Let's get the votes out of the way. There are a number of minutes left. I believe we have to wait until 10 minutes after the vote has been announced in the House before we resume our deliberations. I will look to the clerk for a cue when those 10 minutes have passed, and then we will resume discussion of this item. Okay, so we'll see you in a few minutes. back to order. Just before we took the break to vote, we approved a sub-amendment from Mr. McGregor. And just as we left the meeting, Mr. McKinnon wanted the floor. Mr. McKinnon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to move a sub-amendment which substantially is as what Ms. Demoff said, except that when she said 3 meetings with 1-hour panels, I wish to change that to 1 meeting with 3 panels. So I'm going to read the whole of the motion as applicable to my sub-amendment. And at the end, we changed the indication of timing that was in Ms. Demoff's motion. I understand that is something still to be discussed, but I propose that if we can focus on just this sub-amendment and deal with that as a subsequent issue, we move along most effectively. So the motion as amended would read that the committee study the allegations of political interference in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation and communications, and that the committee holds 1 3-hour meeting that will include a panel to hear from the below officials from the Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 1, Superintendent Darren Campbell, Support Services Officer, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 2, Assistant Commissioner Lee Bergerman, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 3, Chief Superintendent Chris Leather, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 4, Communications Director Leah Scanlon, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 5, Senior Communications Manager Sharon Tessier, RCMP. B, hold a panel to hear from Roman numeral 1, Brenda Lucky, Commissioner of the RCMP. Roman numeral 2, Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan. Point C, hold a panel to hear from former Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Bill Blair. Roman numeral 2, Deputy Minister of Public Safety Robert Stewart. And finally, D, and that the meeting be held following the Commissioner's testimony at the Mass Casualty Commission. I understand there are some issues around the particulars there, but I suggest we vote on that particular sub-amendment, and then we can deal with the particulars as further potential amendments. So thank you.
Has that sub-amendment been circulated to members of the committee?
No, it has not.
Everybody have it?
Because we don't have it translated exactly, so the clerk can't distribute it.
Ms. Dancho, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate Mr. McKinnon's amendment. However, I do feel that it's a bit of a semantics amendment. So I don't know how substantial it is, but I would make the point that 3 hours for about, I think it's almost 10, or our original motion, was about 10 witnesses. I do think that that's not nearly enough time. If we think of the first hour, we're inviting numerous RCMP officials that were mentioned in the Halifax Examiner. That is not nearly enough time. Mr. Lloyd made the point that they all have 5-minute opening statements that would provide perhaps 1, maybe 2 rounds of questioning, and they are certainly a focus of this study. It would not do justice to this study, what we're trying to accomplish, which is to provide more insight into these the legal testimony that was provided. So again, 1 hour is not nearly enough time to have opening statements and to provide rounds of questioning to each party, which is important for the democratic process to get the full story from these witnesses. So I have great issue with the time constraints being put on by Liberal members on this. I think if we want to be open and transparent, we need substantially more time. That's why we originally proposed a full 2-hour meeting for all the RCMP officials. So I think that that is very important and that we need to stick to that. And so we don't support this sub-amendment.
Other members of the committee with commentary on the sub-amendment?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One point of
Go ahead,
clarification.
Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One point of clarification is, do we know exactly when the commissioner is speaking to the Mass Casualty Commission? Do we have a firm date? Because it would seem like I wouldn't want to commit to a sub-amendment where anything could happen and then the commissioner, testimony to the Mass Casualty Commission could be delayed, and then it would force us, because of supporting this amendment, to further delay our meetings. And so, and also, I think the point has been made by some of our colleagues around the table that this is a separate issue from what the Mass Casualty Commission's, what they're talking about. This is about political interference. This isn't about the details that the Mass Casualty Commission is focused on. So I don't think it should be a prerequisite that we wait until the commissioners testified before that. But I'd also like to know if Mr. McKinnon knows the date that the commissioner is testifying, because I can't commit to a sub-amendment unless I know what the date would be.
Point of order, Chair. Right now, the only
Point of order.
The only change is the changing the word meeting to panel. So I had already submitted the amendment on the timing. So maybe we can just stick to discussion of Mr. McKinnon's sub-amendment, which is changing it to panels from the word meeting and suggesting 1 3-hour meeting. Is the only change right now. The timing of the appearance of the meeting itself has already been submitted. So right now it's just panel that we're discussing.
On the same point of order?
Go ahead, Mr. McKinnon.
I guess the other thing is that the other change is that instead of specifying 1-hour panels, the sub-amendment just specifies panels. So it could be hour-and-a-half panel for the large panel. It could be a 2-hour panel for the large panel. That's really up to the committee to decide separately. But I would reiterate that let us vote on the sub-amendment, and then we can deal with the particulars separately.
Any other comment from members? Clerk, are you pointing to somebody?
Yes, Mr. McGregor, and then Mr. Van Popta. Mr. Chair.
Yes, I think it's already been covered. I think this vote is on a very specific part of the language, and then the discussion on the dates will resume when we're back to debating Ms. Damoff's principal amendment.
Okay. Mr. Van Popta, do you have a comment before we go to the vote?
I do. I have a question for clarification. I think Ms. Damoff is saying that her amendment was just technical and reordering things, or sorry, Mr. McKinnon's rather. But I just want clarification whether B4, Minister Bellaire's former press secretary, Mary Liz Power, is she still on, or is that part of the amendment to have her removed? And then 5, any other department officials involved in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation. Are they still in, or are those out?
Mr. McKinnon, for clarification.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Those witnesses were removed by Ms. Damoff's amendment, so that still has to be voted on once we get to through the sub amendments. But those particular witnesses were dropped by Ms. Damoff's sub amendment.
Point d'ordre,
sorry,
Monsieur le Président.
Point of order. Ms. Michaud, could Mr. McKinnon reread his sub-amendment before we vote on it, please?
Always a good idea. Mr. McKinnon, please read your sub-amendment before the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd certainly be delighted to do that. The motion. Sorry, the motion after my sub-amendments would be applied would read as follows. That the committee study the allegations of political interference in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation and communications, and that the committee hold 1 3-hour meeting that will include point A panel to hear from the below officials from the Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 1, Superintendent Darren Campbell, Support Services Officer, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 2, Assistant Commissioner Lee Bergerman, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 3, Chief Superintendent Chris Leather, Nova Scotia RCMP, Roman numeral 4, Communications Director Leah Scanlon, Nova Scotia RCMP. Roman numeral 5, Senior Communications Manager Sharon Tessier, RCMP. Point B, hold a panel to hear from Roman numeral 1, Brenda Lucky, Commissioner of RCMP. Roman numeral 2, Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan. Point C, hold a panel to hear from Roman numeral 1, former Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair. 3, Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Robert Stewart. And point D, and that the meeting be held following the Commissioner's testimony at the Mass Casualty Commission. And so the substantive sub-amendment really is to change the Ms. Demoff's language about 3 meetings with 1 panel each to 1 meeting with 3 panels. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dancho, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify because Mr. McKinnon said that the timing for the 3 panels had not been identified, but when he just read his sub-amendment again, he said 3 hours of 3 panels, I believe. So could he just clarify, is the hours open and it's 3 panels, or is it 3 panels in 3 hours?
That the committee hold 1 3-hour meeting that will include A panel, B panel, C panel.
So, Mr. Clerk, to my point, Mr. McKinnon may have misspoke earlier because he had mentioned that the timing for the hours was open with his amendment, but it is in fact defined to 3 hours, which to my point is not nearly enough time for all of the witnesses to fully testify.
Okay, is there any other comment before we put the matter to a vote?
Just clarification, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So my point earlier was that we did not specify 1-hour panels. So within the context of the broader meeting, we can set those panels to be, whatever length makes sense in that context.
Are we ready for the question? Clerk, would you please administer the vote?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The question is on the sub-amendment moved by Mr. McKinnon. Ms. Demoff? Yes. Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Nur Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Shifki?
Yes.
Mr. Zubairi?
Oui.
Ms. Dancho?
No.
Mr. Lloyd?
No.
Mr. Shipley? Mr. Shipley?
No.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
Steven Papta?
No.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 7, nays contre 4, 4.
Therefore, the sub-amendment passes, which would return us to a debate over Ms. Demoff's amendment. I believe, Clerk, is that correct?
That's correct. As
Do we
amended,
have,
yes.
as amended, do we have a speaker's list to address Ms. Demoff's amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Dancho, I think I see a hand up.
First it was, apologies, Mr. Chair. First
Yes,
was Mr.
Mr.
McGregor, and then Ms. Dancho.
Okay, Mr. McGregor, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just make this quick. I just wanted to put on the record that I support 90% of what Ms. Demoff is proposing here. That my disagreement, though, with the amendment is on the timing. I do feel strongly that this meeting should happen next week. So I can't pick out parts of the amendment. So overall, that's why I will have to vote against the amendment.
Ms. Dancho?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move a sub-amendment, but I have a question for the clerk first. So the scheduled maintenance is to begin the week following next week. My understanding is if Parliament requires an urgent meeting, I believe we've established this is urgent, that we can meet during scheduled maintenance. Mr. Clerk, can you confirm that, please?
Yes, Ms. Dancho. The House Administration would provide support if necessary. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just one more question before I move my sub-amendment. I think the point has been made that next week there is Memorial. Now we could have this meeting perhaps, that's on Wednesday, we could have this meeting on Thursday, which to Mr. McGregor's point and the points that have been made, this is an urgent matter. But I recognize that Liberal members and perhaps our Bloc colleague would prefer not to have it the same week of the Memorial. If that's the case, I think perhaps a compromise, a purple tie moment, maybe the first week of the scheduled maintenance, we host the meetings. So I would like to move an amendment to or sub-amendment to the Liberal motion. Now, Mr. Chair, I don't have the amendment with the sub-amendment in front of me. So I'm not sure how we proceed in this type of situation, but the objective of my amendment is as follows. So the panels have been divided into three groups. We have the RCMP officials, we have Commissioner Lucky, the Deputy Minister, and the Minister, I believe. Is that correct? And then the third is, if we can just clarify, because we don't have it in front of us. Oh, I have it now, pardon me. So we have a panel with the RCMP officials, we have a panel with Commissioner Lucky and Deputy Commissioner Brennan, and we have a panel with Minister Blair and the Deputy Minister, correct? So I would move an amendment that we make the first meeting with the RCMP officials 2 hours, the panel with Commissioner Lucky and Deputy Commissioner Brennan 1 hour, and the panel with Minister Blair and the Deputy Minister 1 hour. And that we provide a 30-minute recess between each panel. So that's one part of the amendment. The second part of the amendment is the hour that Minister Blair and his Deputy Minister are coming, that a representative from the Prime Minister's office comes. Obviously, we require someone from the Prime Minister's office to speak because they have been mentioned in two different accounts by the legal witness testimony provided to the Mass Casualty Commission. This investigation at this committee would be incomplete without a representative of the Prime Minister's office. So that's the second part of my amendment. And then the third is that we meet in the first week. We meet in the first week of the scheduled maintenance. I propose Monday, and I'm not sure the exact date, but Monday.
Okay, so we have the sub-amendment that's on the table. I now would invite members of the committee to comment.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Lloyd, and then Mr. Maff.
Thank you,
Mr. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's important to note that this sub-amendment, to clarify and summarize what my colleague was saying, is that it adds an hour. And that addresses my concern, because having 5 officials from the RCMP present in a 1 hour panel, even if, as Mr. McKinnon said, we could extend it by a half an hour within the 3 hour time frame, it's not enough time for us to really properly cross-examine these officials. So I think I agree with the 2 hours, but I would also note that this sub-amendment would basically, because we are setting a date after the maintenance, during the maintenance period, that it would invalidate the amendment that Ms. Demoff made, that we await the Commissioner's testimony at the Mass Casualty Commission, unless that testimony takes place before that, but I don't believe it will. So it's important to note that would be eliminating, this sub-amendment would be eliminating that requirement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Demoff.
Thanks, Chair. So in the spirit of collegiality with my colleague from the Conservatives, I think we could agree to a 4 hour meeting, but I would reiterate that the Commissioner is testifying at the inquiry in July at some point. So I continue to stress that she should come following her testimony. So even moving it to that first week of July will be prior to her testimony. We don't have a date. I know Mr. Lloyd we were sort of having an offline conversation on that, but my understanding is that there is not a date for the commissioner to testify. And it's also my understanding that when she testifies, there's no time limit on it. So it could be a day, it could be 2 days, it could be 3 days, it could be a week. It's dependent on the commissioners and how many questions they want to ask of her. So if we're having these officials come, I strongly urge colleagues to do this after she has testified. We have all the facts on the table. That would likely be August, but we could support changing it to a 4-hour meeting, but not the end part. So I think we'd have to vote against Ms. Dancho's amendment, and then perhaps, depending on how that turns out, we could sub-amendment again to be just a 4-hour meeting. But we'd have to vote against it as it's worded now.
Ms. Dancho, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Moff, for your comments, but I would reiterate the point that's been made several times. The inquiry is investigating something separate than we are investigating at the Public Safety Committee. Our responsibility is to hold the government accountable for their actions in all regards and all departments in public safety. This is an urgent matter, a shocking revelation from the Mass Casualty Commission that we will be further investigating, which is our duties as opposition members and as members of this Public Safety Committee. So I would just reiterate, the inquiry is investigating separate matters than what we are investigating, and we have an obligation to move forward, and frankly, to move forward quickly given the revelations that were made and how shocking that they are. And I believe that the public deserves answers rather than waiting 4, 5, 6 weeks to hear. So I disagree respectfully with my colleague on that.
Other comments from members of the committee on the sub-amendment?
Point of order.
Point of order.
Yeah, I would just like to caution, I bring to the attention regarding Ms. Dancho's words, these are not revelations so much as allegations, and I think we should keep to that language.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. This is legal witness testimony as part of the Mass Casualty Commission, just to be clear.
Any other comments from members of the committee before we put the sub-amendment to a vote?
Mr. Chair, Mr. McGregor, and
yes.
then Mr. Moff.
Mr. McGregor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for the I guess this is maybe a clarification from our clerk, like for the critical maintenance, it did say if there's an urgent request for a House committee to meet, so it is still possible if we do decide to meet that week of July the 4th?
If I may, Mr. Chair, yes, Mr. McGregor, it's indeed the case. Yes, it would be possible. If required by the committee, exceptionally, we would be able to hold a meeting. Yes.
That was my only. Okay.
Okay, Ms. DeMoff.
I would defer to Ms. Michaud, and then I'll go, Mr. Chair.
Merci, Madame Damoff.
Thank you, Ms. DeMoff. Once again, as I said earlier, out of respect for the resource available to those, I know they can make arrangements to make sure the committee can be held, but these resources have 3 weeks in a year to do everything that needs to be done to prepare for the next parliamentary session. So to ask for a 4-hour meeting, and I do agree with a 4-hour meeting to hear from all the witnesses, but I do think we could push this back until after the commissioner has testified. I will be obliged to vote against this sub-amendment because I'm in agreement with the 4 hours, but not with the timing for when the meeting would be held. If the two could be separated, we could perhaps arrive at a compromise. But as it is now, I will have to vote against this sub-amendment.
Mr. Shipley, I see your hand up.
Sorry, Chair, I was next. I deferred to Ms. Michaud.
Madame Demoff, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Just a further comment on Ms. Dancho's. We wouldn't support a half-hour break in between each panel as well. That's getting into quite a lengthy meeting. We don't normally do that. The other thing I just think that we need to be mindful of is that the 5 individuals who've been asked to come to testify, and it's now they're being asked to testify for 2 hours, are individuals who were deeply traumatized by what happened in Nova Scotia and have publicly acknowledged that they have had mental health issues following that. Asking them to then appear for 2 hours at our committee, I think we should be mindful of that and giving the option of 1 or 2 hours to be respectful of the mental health challenges that they've had. I'm not quite sure how we deal with that in the motion, but I just wanted to raise that as a concern for all of us, because I know the members of this committee do take the mental health of our public safety officers very seriously, especially these individuals who experience so much trauma.
Mr. Shipley.
Thank you, Chair. I really think this is an extremely important issue to a lot of people, starting with the people who were involved with this incident, starting with the people who lost loved ones in this incident, to the residents of Nova Scotia and all Canadians. There are some serious allegations out there right now that I think is our job. It is our duty to look into these allegations as soon as possible. The fact that we're discussing putting it off actually is quite shocking to me. The House has indicated that the resources would be available for the week after July 4th. To put it off for 6 weeks minimum, I think is just not doing our jobs properly. I think we need to do this the sooner the better, look into these serious allegations, find out what happened, and move forward. So I'll be supporting doing these as soon as we possibly can, with keeping in mind, yes, let's not do it next week when the memorial's on. I think that's respectful. But the week after that, I think would be more than fine. I think we owe it to people, owe it to Canadians to find out what really happened and move forward. So thank you, Chair.
Ms. Dancho.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I agree with my colleague, Mr. Shipley, about the urgency of this. I don't think it provides answers for Canadians or the families of victims who have likely been shocked by the information by the Mass Casualty Commission. And I do appreciate Ms. Damoff's comments about the mental health of the witnesses, certainly. We do know from the testimony that was reported that they also suffered as a result of the meeting with Commissioner Luckey, who from the testimony, it would seem that she was under significant pressure. And to quote the testimony written by Superintendent Campbell, that she was very upset. And that was stressed consistently in the reporting of the Mass Casualty Commission's findings of the written testimony from Mr. Campbell. So again, I think that some of the responsibility of the impact on these individuals would seem to lie with those who were putting the pressure on them to reveal information and to interfere for political purposes in a criminal investigation. That is why we should be meeting urgently to discuss this matter. So again, I would just reiterate that to wait 5, 6, maybe even 7, we're not sure, weeks is inappropriate and unacceptable, frankly.
Thank you. Other comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Lloyd has his hand up.
Mr. Lloyd, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address one of the points that Ms. Demoff raised is, it is going to be a long 4-hour meeting. And if we don't have any recesses between the panels, it's going to be very long for us and for the witnesses. And I think, the IT team is probably going to have to work to get, because maybe all these people won't be here physically, they'll be here virtually. So there is going to be like a 10 to 20 minute period to get these witnesses on. So I just think there's no reason we shouldn't have a 30-minute recess so that people can go get a coffee, can go to the bathroom, so that we can have time to get the witnesses changed over. So I don't see why there would be a problem with having a 30-minute recess in this case, since we probably are going to be taking 10, 15 minutes to get the witnesses changed over anyway. So I would stand by that sub-amendment.
Other comments from members of the committee on the sub-amendment? If not, clerk, would you please administer the vote?
The question is on the sub-amendment moved by Ms. Dancho. Mr. Moff? No. Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Mr. Nur Mohammed?
Nope.
Mr. Shifki?
No.
Mr. Zubairi?
No.
Ms. Dancho?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Van Papta?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
Contre.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 5, 5, nays contre 6, 6.
So the sub-amendment is defeated. We now move back to Ms. Damoff's amendment to the main motion. Do we have speakers who wish to resume debate?
Yeah,
Ms.
Ms.
Dancho, I see your, sorry? Sorry, clerk, did you want to say
Yes.
something?
No, I just wanted to say Ms. Dancho, then Mr. Lloyd, then Ms. Damoff.
Dancho, Lloyd, Damoff. Okay, Ms. Dancho, off you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to be clear, we are now looking at a situation where this meeting to follow up on the recent shocking testimony from the Mass Casualty Commission that there was political interference from the Liberal government and pressure put on the RCMP to interfere in a criminal investigation. Liberal position currently is to wait over 4 or 5, maybe 6 weeks to hear from those witnesses, to take those 10 witnesses, or pardon me, 9 witnesses, and put them in a 3-hour meeting 5 to 6 weeks from now. That's 9 witnesses in 3 hours. And then also they refused to allow a member of the Prime Minister's office to attend. So they are avoiding accountability on this. I'm actually quite shocked that members of the Liberal Party on this committee are so keen to avoid transparency on this. It's very disappointing, Mr. Chair. As the amendment stands now, it is completely unacceptable and certainly does not do justice to the victims' families who are continuing to be shocked and traumatized by this. So I would ask committee members that we move forward on something better than waiting over a month from now, squeezing 9 witnesses in to 3 hours and having the Prime Minister's office, who has been accused twice in the testimony, from appearing. They need to face accountability. We need to be transparent, and this needs to be a fulsome investigation, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lloyd, you're next.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would note that Ms. Damoff had indicated earlier that she would be supportive of extending the 3 hours to the 4 hours. And so, I mean, I think we can, and that there was an indication that there would be a recess, but that we just wouldn't need to specify that it would have to be 30 minutes, but that there would be, subject to the will of the committee, I believe, a period of time between the panels so that members could take the appropriate time to reflect and to, think about the testimony they're hearing, take a break, go to the bathroom. So I would say I will move a sub-amendment that I think will get the support on that we extend this to a 4-hour meeting. So we can just clear that out of the way.
Okay, so we now have a sub-amendment on the table, as just articulated by Mr. Lloyd. Is there commentary on the sub-amendment?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Nur Mohammed.
Yes.
Next.
Mr. Nur Mohammed, go ahead.
I was simply going to say, I think that it makes good sense to do that. I think it allows us to ensure that the time that we lose between changing panels, so on and so forth, that it accommodates, I think, a good compromise for us to move forward. So I think it's a good thing to move forward with.
Other commentary?
I want to clarify something, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So if there is any recess time between that, we just want to clarify that that does not take away from the 4 hours of meetings, that there will be 4 hours of witness testimony total. Okay, just getting that on the record.
Is that clear to members of the committee? Okay, I'll ask you, Mr. Lloyd, to read your sub-amendment before we move to a vote.
Yeah, I would just move that the, ask for unanimous consent for the committee to consent to 4 hours.
Do we have unanimous consent from the committee to move to 4 hours?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we do.
So it's 4 hours, but
Therefore, we have unanimous consent to approve the proposed sub-amendment. Is that correct? Clerk?
Ms. Dancho, Mr. Chair, and then Mr. Van. Actually, Mr. Van
Yes, but
Popta first, and then Ms. Dancho, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Van Popta.
I'll defer to Ms. Dancho. I think her hand was up first, if I'm not mistaken.
Always tough to know. Go ahead, Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move a sub-amendment to the witness list for the date that the minister and deputy, or for the panel that the minister and deputy minister are attending, to include a representative from the Prime Minister's office who was working on this file at the time of the meeting mentioned in the MCC testimony that was within that first week of the massacre. Pardon me. So I move an amendment to include a representative from the Prime Minister's office who was involved at this time, mentioned in the Halifax Examiner article.
Yes, but just for clarity, have we dealt with Mr. Lloyd's sub-amendment? I believe we have by unanimous consent. Is that everybody's understanding? Yeah. So we can move on to that, approve that sub-amendment, and now there is an additional sub-amendment that's now being put forward by Ms. Dancho. So I will open up discussion of that sub-amendment to members of the committee. Floor is open.
I believe I'm up next. Well, I completely support that motion to have a witness from the Prime Minister's office attend. The evidence that was given by Superintendent of the RCMP for Nova Scotia, Darren Campbell, indicates that there was pressure from the Prime Minister's office to disclose certain information at a press conference that Mr. Campbell was not comfortable with presenting or making public at that time, so as not to jeopardize the ongoing investigation. I think it's extremely important for us, this committee, Parliamentary Standing Committee on Public Safety, to hear from an appropriate witness from the Prime Minister's office.
Other comments on this sub-amendment?
Madame Michaud, Mr. Chair.
Madame Michaud.
It's just a point of clarification. Do we have up till 1 today? And if so, what time exactly will we be able to vote on this motion?
Clerk, what is the status of time available to us within this meeting?
We can go beyond 1 p.m., Mr. Chair.
How far beyond?
I'm not sure, Mr. Chair. I can get back to you.
Okay, well, we can go beyond the top of the hour and we'll see what further information is passed on to us. Other comments on the sub-amendment? Any other hands up? Then can we call the vote? Ms. Dancho, for clarity, would you please repeat for members of the committee the substance of your sub-amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My sub-amendment is to invite a member, add to the witness list, a member of the Prime Minister's office who is involved with the who was involved at the time of the reports from the Mass Casualty Commission that is the subject of the 1064 motion.
Okay.
Who
Go
was
ahead,
involved
Clerk.
with that, pardon me, who was involved between the Prime Minister's office and communicating with Minister Blair and Commissioner Lucky, pardon me for clarification.
Okay, is that clear to all members of the committee? Okay, then Clerk, go ahead and administer the vote, please.
The question is on the sub-amendment moved by Ms. Dancho. Mr. Muff? Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Mr. Nur Mohammed?
No.
Mr. Shifki?
No.
Mr. Zubairi?
No.
Ms. Dancho?
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Van Papta?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
Je vais m'abstenir.
I would abstain.
I abstain as well.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 4, nays contre, 5.
So the sub-amendment is defeated.
Yes.
We now move back to discussion of Madame Demoff's amendment. Who would like the floor to resume that debate?
Ms. Demoff first, and then Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Demoff?
Thank you, Chair. Being mindful of time and the fact that we have another vote at 1:30, perhaps I could encourage our colleagues, maybe we could move to a vote on my amendment and see where that lands. I would really very much like us to finish this today. I don't want us to have to come back another day for this meeting. We're all here today. This is the last day of Parliament, so I'm just going to encourage, perhaps if colleagues are okay with it, we can move to a vote on my amendment and go from there.
Do we have agreement from colleagues that we can move to a vote on Ms. Demoff's amendment? No, we don't. There are hands up. Clerk, who wants to talk?
I did.
Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, who wants to speak now?
Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Lloyd, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we're coming very close to the end of what we're going to do here. I think there's maybe only one really outstanding issue. I know that Ms. Michaud expressed concern about when we would have this meeting. I know that she expressed concern that there is a maintenance period in the House of Commons, but we also, from July 4th to July 22nd. Now, I do note that the clerk did say that resources could be made available, and I know Ms. Michaud knows that because she was told that. We were all told that before. So what I would propose is a sub-amendment that we meet by July 23rd or when the maintenance ends, whichever is sooner. And I think that might be a compromise that the committee can agree on.
Okay, we now have a sub-amendment on the table. Any commentary on Mr. Lloyd's sub-amendment? Seeing none?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Demoff.
Yes.
Would like to speak to.
Ms. Demoff?
Just quickly, Mr. Lloyd, do you want to clarify the week of July 25th or when the maintenance is completed? Just, it could go later too. So do you want to just amend it the week of July 25th?
So to clarify what my amendment is saying is that, you know, we recognize that this maintenance is happening. It's scheduled from the 4th to the 22nd. So we want to get this done as soon as the maintenance is done. And so I am suggesting, I had originally suggested the 22nd, but the clerk told me that that is a Saturday, and I don't think we want to be having this meeting on a Saturday. So I would, pardon me? 23rd, sorry. So I'm clarifying my sub-amendment is actually the 25th, which would be the Monday. And if the maintenance is still going on the 25th, we would still have the meeting. If the maintenance ends before the 25th, then we could have the meeting the day after. So the idea is that whatever happens sooner, the maintenance ends or the 25th of July. And I hope that'll be good for the committee.
Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Madame Michaud would like.
Madame Michaud.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I do appreciate the compromise, and it suits me fine.
Okay. Are we ready for the vote? Any other hands up?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify in some, so we are having 9 witnesses appear through 3 panels for a 4-hour meeting following the day after on the day after the maintenance is done. Pardon me, and we are having 0 representation from the Prime Minister's office. Can you confirm that that's the case? That we were meeting in a month, no representation from the Prime Minister's office. Meeting in a month, no PMO. Just to confirm.
Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's my understanding.
Okay. Are we ready for the vote? Go ahead, clerk.
The question is on the sub-amendment moved by Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Muff?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Noor Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Shifki?
Yes.
Mr. Zubairi?
Yes.
Ms. Tancho?
Yes to Mr. Lloyd's sub-amendment.
Mr. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shipley?
Yes.
Mr. Van Papta?
Yes.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 11, 11, nays contre, 0, aucun.
The sub-amendment passes. We now revert back to Ms. Demoff's amendment. Are there any other comments? I'm very conscious of time, and I would encourage members to keep their interventions short so we can move this to a vote. Are there any hands up?
Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Lloyd?
Mr. Chair, given that this has been heavily amended, I just think it would be a good opportunity for either the clerk
Yes.
to give us a final reading on what we will be voting on with the amendments.
I agree. I agree. Always a good idea. So clerk, would you please read out Ms. Damoff's amendment as amended?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So Ms. Damoff's amendment, or the motion as amended by Ms. Damoff, would read that the committee studied the allegations of political interference in the 2020 Nova Scotia mass murder investigation and communications, and that the committee hold 1 4-hour meeting that will include a panel to hear from the below officials from the Nova Scotia RCMP, Superintendent Darren Campbell, Support Services Officer, Nova Scotia RCMP, Assistant Commissioner Lee Bergerman, Nova Scotia RCMP, Chief Superintendent Chris Leather, Nova Scotia RCMP, Communications Director Leah Scanlon, Nova Scotia RCMP, Senior Communications Manager Sharon Tessier, RCMP, the second panel will be held to hear from Brenda Lucky, Commissioner of the RCMP, Deputy Commissioner Brian Brennan. The third panel to hear from former Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, Bill Blair, Deputy Minister of Public Safety, Robert Stewart, and that the meeting be held on the week of July 25th.
Point of order?
Point of order.
Yeah, the clerk's readback was substantially correct. However, the language did not specify a second panel or a third panel. It just said a panel and a panel.
Can we agree to make that modest change, colleagues? I see yes. Continue, clerk.
Point of order?
Point of order.
Yes, it's Mr. Lloyd, Mr. Chair. So my point
Yes,
of order,
Mr. Lloyd.
just to clarify, that the meeting would be held on July 25th or the day after the end of maintenance, whichever is sooner.
Yes, I believe I heard you say that. Clerk, make sure that that is included in the language that describes the amendment as amended. Okay, are you finished reading or is there more? Clerk, are you done?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, can we now put the question to members of the committee? And that is Ms. Damoff's amendment as amended, as articulated just now by the clerk. Go ahead, clerk.
Mr. Mav,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes?
Mr. Nur Mohammed,
Yes.
Mr. Shifki,
Yes.
Mr. Zubairi,
Yes.
Ms. Dancho,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm having some connectivity issues. Can you just, I'm sorry, I've lost the last few minutes. Can you just confirm what we were voting on?
We're voting on Ms. Damoff's amendment as amended through the
Understood.
various sub-amendments that we have dealt with over the last hour or so. And the clerk is halfway through the roll call, and I think he's now stopped at your name.
Oh, okay. No.
Okay. Go ahead, clerk.
No. I'm sorry.
Mr. Lloyd,
No.
Mr. Shipley,
No.
Mr. Van Popta,
No.
Madame Michaud,
Sorry? Yes.
En faveur.
Mr. Mr. McGregor,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 7, nays contre, 4, 4.
Therefore, the amendment as amendment passes. Colleagues, I have some committee business that needs to be dealt with now.
Mr. Chair, we have
Yes?
We still have to vote on the
Sorry?
main motion, Mr. Chair? We still have to vote on the motion itself?
Yes, voting on the main motion, of course. Clerk, why don't you do the roll call on the main motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And read the main motion first, please.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering, the main motion as we just passed the sub-amendment is essentially identical. I wonder if we can just forestall that and go to the vote?
Is there agreement that we just go to the vote? Ms. Dancho?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We can proceed shortly. I just want to make clear that the Conservative members were we found it to be very important that a member from the Prime Minister's office come to answer to the
Point of order,
legal
Chair.
testimony provided to.
Are we not in the middle
We are
of
not
a vote?
voting, Mr. We are free to
Oh,
discuss. I
okay.
can bring forward a sub-amendment if I'd like to, Pam, which I'm not doing. Or Ms. Damoff, pardon me. So, Mr. Chair, I just want to be clear that what was very important, we believe, to the testimonies that an official from the Prime Minister's office come to answer to the official legal testimony in the Mass Casualty Commission. The Liberal members led the way on ensuring that did not happen today. They also led the way on ensuring that this meeting does not happen for another month. So, for those reasons, we could not support this amended motion.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Sorry, with respect to Ms. Dancho, the date was selected through Mr. Lloyd's sub-amendment. So, I just think that we need to be clear on that sub-amendment, which he offered as a compromise, a very good compromise, did come from the Conservative side. So I think that needs to be on the record.
On that point of order, Mr. Chair, I think we're trying to get this meeting as soon as possible. Mr. Lloyd made a good faith effort to try to get it to be as soon as possible. Our objective was to have it within the next week. So just to the point, we were trying our best to get this as quickly as possible. I appreciate Mr. Lloyd's work to ensure that this happens by the 25th. But of course, our initial motion was to have this next week, just to be clear.
Okay. Can we now get to the main motion, or are there colleagues who have something else to say before we do? Seeing no hands. Clerk, would you please administer the vote on the main motion and read the main motion, please?
Mr. Chair, you want me to read the main motion?
Yes, please. Unless members are content that they understand the main motion, there has already been a vote on it, and that we can now proceed to a vote on the main motion. Is it agreed that we can do that?
There seems to be an agreement, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so then let's move right to the main motion. Go ahead, clerk.
The question is on the main motion as amended. Ms. Damoff?
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. Noor Mohammed?
Yes.
Mr. Shifki?
Yes.
Mr. Zubairi?
Yes.
Ms. Dancho?
No.
Mr. Lloyd?
No.
Mr. Shipley?
No.
Mr. Van Popta?
No.
Madame Michaud?
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 7, nays contre, 4, 4.
I declare the main motion as amended carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
Mr. Lloyd would like to be recognized.
Mr. Lloyd?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that you had said that we do have some committee business, but the clock is currently at 1:15, and so I would like to move that we adjourn the meeting. I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, well, then that goes,
Mr.
sorry,
Chair?
clerk?
Yes, first, if I may, the bells are ringing, so we need unanimous consent to continue to sit before proceeding to other business.
Do we have unanimous consent to continue to sit? We do not. So clerk, what's the next move?
Just one moment, please, Mr. Chair.
I know.
Mr. Chair, we do have a vote to adjourn on the floor. A motion to adjourn, it's dilatory. I think we should deal with that, and then we can deal with the I don't know what the process is. I mean, the lights are going, but
So clerk, where do you take us from here?
Mr. Chair, we first have to deal with because of the bells, we need to have unanimous consent before undertaking any other business. Without unanimous consent, we cannot move on to other business. I'm not sure if we have one.
Well, I called for unanimous consent and didn't get it. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, may I ask the indulgence of the committee to give unanimous consent to continue until we deal with this matter of adjournment or not?
Do we have unanimous consent to deal with this matter of adjournment? Yes. So let's deal with the matter of adjournment. There is other committee business that needs to be dealt with here. So what will be the sequence of events? What is next, clerk?
Mr. Chair, the motion to adjourn has been moved and it's not debatable.
So then we just go right to a vote on a motion to adjourn.
That would be my advice, yes.
Okay, then let's vote on the motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, just one moment, please.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think that we are ready for that vote.
Well, I'm awaiting to hear that from the clerk. Are we ready for the vote, clerk?
Yes.
On the
Mr.
matter
Chair.
of adjournment?
Yes.
Okay, well then would you please administer the vote to adjourn?
The question is on the motion moved by Mr. Lloyd to adjourn the meeting. Ms. Damoff,
Yes.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes?
Mr. Noor Mohammed,
En faveur.
Mr. Shifki,
Yes.
Monsieur Zuberi,
Yes.
Ms. Dancho,
Yes.
Mr. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley,
Yes.
Mr. Van Popta,
Yes.
Madame Michaud,
En faveur.
Mr. McGregor.
Oui.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 11, 11, nays contre, 0, aucun.
That means that this meeting is adjourned. Clerk, what happens to unfinished business that's still on the order paper?
It will remain outstanding, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so then this meeting is formally adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a terrific weekend. Summer weather in Winnipeg.